is a big deal for all of us and for UNOLS. And, it's a good time to reflect on, what the UNOLS community is all about and, how important it is, and being in the position that I'm in, the council is in, and, we all get to see how important everybody's role is to the success of the research fleet. And, the science couldn't be done without everybody's commitment and involvement as we see it over and over and over again. And so, I want to start by thanking the UNOLS office staff for the great work that they always do. It's such a steady, well-run operation. I rely on it. I know everybody does. And so thank you all, in the staff office or the office, it's great work that you're doing. Really appreciate that. Standing committees, I've come to really see how rubber hits the road, with our actions and our activities, and keeping the fleet healthy and moving forward in a real positive way. The standing committees, the chairs, doing incredible jobs, in such a voluntary kind of a mode. It's amazing what they are doing for us. Member representatives, thank you all for stepping up and let me remind you to approve things, or at least vote on the issues that come before you, such as the recent charter amendments and that sort of thing. And it's important that you stay involved in that way to let us know that everyone's on the right track from your perspective, because the council and all of our activities are representing the interests of the community primarily. And the agency folks, you think about what we've been through for the last year and a half or so. It's amazing what the agency people have done to keep us all healthy, keep science healthy, keep the fleet healthy. It's it's astounding, what they did for the fleet and for the community. And so I thank everybody for all that they do, in an ongoing basis. It's just, to me, amazing to come in and see that, going on the way it is. So it's an amazing community, and I'm proud to be part of that community. So thank you so much. So, I'm excited about this meeting. It's, it's our 50th anniversary for UNOLS. And so, Doug has brought in some great speakers, and I'm looking forward to seeing that. And also on November 10th, I think that you've all seen the schedule that the UNOLS office sent around, with our meetings throughout into early November. But we close out with some people coming in to talk about, they're reminiscing about early days of UNOLS, hopefully telling us some good stories, and just put a little life back into, what is UNOLS, how did it start, what did it go through. So I'm looking forward to those stories, and hopefully we'll get some of the old timers back to really entertain us with what they had to go through to make what is now a very, very successful organization. And that's all I really want to say by way of introduction. Again, thank you all for being here. Thank you for all you do. Looking forward to a lot of good presentations. Looking forward to celebration for UNOLS 50th. So thank you. Doug?
Thanks, Dennis. Appreciate it. Thanks for the great words. Thanks for the kind words about the office. Great to see everybody. Welcome, and thanks for making time to join us for today and a series of meetings over the next few weeks as we bring the annual meeting to you virtually. I'll start off by echoing what Dennis said. Just thanks so much to the agencies, National Science Foundation, Office of Naval Research, NOAA, Bureau of Ocean and Energy Management, and USGS, and their unwavering support makes all this happen. We couldn't do it without you, and especially during, as Dennis touched on, COVID-19, where the challenges were huge, and you just never blinked an eye and kept on supporting our community. So thank you very much. We just can't thank you enough every day. I'm going to share my screen, go through some slides. So I'm going to start by giving you an update, COVID-19, how it's gone in the last year since we last got together like this, and then I'll do a quick review of the year from the UNOLS perspective. Alice will give us an update on the marine facilities planning and all the great progress that's been made in that system over the past year, especially thanks to Alice and our developer. And then we'll talk a little bit about scheduling, fleet utilization, and the fleet kind of what the fleet life looks like, looking ahead for all the ships in the fleet. And that'll wrap us up for today. So it should be pretty quick, but please don't hesitate to ask questions. Reminder, we're all on Zoom, and we're all well practiced at it now. So if you've got questions, please raise your hand. Otherwise, it's good to mute yourself so the background noise doesn't get in the way of everything. But anyway, we're glad to have you here, and let's get started. I'll share my screen and hopefully not screw it up. Can you see that okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, you might want to put it in presentation mode. That's all.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to try to do here real quick. Slide here. And there. Okay. Are we okay, Alice?
Great. Yep, we're great.
Thanks. Okay, so quickly talking about COVID-19, we've continued operations since around the 1st of July last year, once we returned to operations. And I counted the other day, and we've done like 361 cruises since we restarted. Of course, cruises vary from 1 day to 50 days, but I think that's a great success story to tell right there. Through the hard work of the ship operators and marine technicians, and obviously the science community, who've all adapted to our policies, our procedures and guidelines, and have been able to get out there and do science safely and get a lot of science done. So we're very excited about that. Looking ahead to 2022, we're going to be doing even more. So we'll talk about that later. Our guidance, we put out last year before the fleet returned to operations, and we've updated it 4 times since, kind of stay abreast of vaccine development and deployment. Delta variant and how that made us rethink it a little bit. And next update probably will talk about booster shots. So we've already been in contact with George Washington Medical Faculty Associates, our telemedicine supporter, and they've been giving us they stay regularly engaged with us on this, and they do a lot of research, read a lot of papers, talk to a lot of scientists, work in the emergency room, and they give us good guidance from there. But we think it's worked pretty darn well given our results, and I'll talk some more about that. One of the big changes we did in the past year, in the last few months, is we, in the wake of the deployment of vaccines, and most of our people, the crews are vaccinated. There's very few who are not, and by far the vast majority of the science parties are fully vaccinated too, which is just a great recognition by our community that how important this is, and it's really helped people buy back time in their lives by not having to, if you're fully vaccinated, you don't have to do a quarantine for 2 weeks or 10 days now. As long as you test okay, you have no symptoms, then you follow some precautions beforehand, you can walk aboard the ship and go do your science, which is a big improvement from where we were a year ago, where everybody had to do, lockdowns for 14 days. It was really hard on everybody. So that's big progress. And we really appreciate all the hard work by the operators to try to get their crews vaccinated quickly. So that was a big change, and we've seen the big improvements there. We've had a few cases aboard the ships. There's only been 3 ships that have reported any cases aboard. One was a post-cruise test on a small vessel, and then that quickly found out it was just limited to 1 person, and nobody else showed any symptoms, mild symptoms in this case for that person. And then we had 2 other cases that came up on ships, but the ships did a good job, talking to George Washington, following their local health protocols. And this was for fully vaccinated ships and science parties. So it had a couple breakthroughs, but in the impact on science actually was absolutely minimal. And the ships were close to port anyway, so it didn't really no one had to worry about turning around and coming back. So all in all, through 361 cruises, only three cases like that. That's pretty impressive. We've had other cases that have been caught before cruises by, through a good testing regimen by our operators. And so we had 1 cruise that couldn't go because of pre-cruise testing and what they found. But otherwise, it's been pretty much just adjustments, swapping out people, or people couldn't sail, but the ship's gone away and did their science. So we think the protocols have worked pretty darn well for keeping the fleet safe and still allowing science to happen. And again, I know I'll say it many times, but thanks to a lot of great work by the science parties as well as the operators to allow science to happen. We've only done one foreign cruise so far. I mean, we've had one of our risk mitigation steps is to go US to US ports because there's a lot of foreign ports that are closed right now still. And there's other places we just didn't want to take a chance. So, you know, all this success has been based on, you know, working US to US, other than the Neil Armstrong has worked out of Iceland recently successfully, but Iceland's a pretty good country for that. They have strict protocols, great governmental support, and they've been working really well with Hui to make that happen with the Armstrong. So that's a good story. Looking to 2022, we're hoping to be able to start getting into some foreign ports, but there's a lot of work happening already trying to figure out how to make that work with good surety. Or do we do like we've heard to do in 2021, where some cruises have just had to be long cruises going from a US port. Unfortunately, the agencies have supported all that extra transit time to get out there to do the work. I mean, Ravel in particular, as well as the Armstrong, have done some really long cruises because they're limited to US ports, and the Langseth had to do it too for the big Cascadia trip this year. Finally, just talking about COVID-19, we've been having regular check-ins with the Marine superintendents, like we touched on last year, about every 6 weeks, and a lot of times our topic starts with COVID-19 and, you know, lessons learned, challenges encountered. We've had direct talks with George Washington a couple of times, so the Marine Soup's going to ask questions. So it's been a great, I mean, I think it's just really helped the whole community work through this. The fact that the operators can share, you know, procedures, policies, protocols, and asking questions and lessons learned has really helped everybody in dealing with this, you know, this huge challenge. So that's kind of the summary from where we are after a year plus of operating with in COVID-19. And, you know, we'll continue to update the guidelines as the, you know, the pandemic continues to evolve. Like I said earlier, working closely with George Washington, they've been really good at supporting us through this. Is there any questions regarding the COVID-19 and how we've operated last year? Great.
See anything?
Great. So I'm going to try to. All right.
Hey, Doug, this is Bruce Applegate. I do have a question.
Sure, Bruce.
Just a question about the risk assessments. Do we have an idea how long we'll continue doing these risk assessments? Which I mean, we put a lot of time and effort into it, and I'm just wondering, you know, what the future looks like for continuing these, and can we think about winding those down anytime soon?
Well, that's a good question, Bruce. And I think we've pulled back, and as far as you know, we don't require them as much as before. It's more like higher risk cruises, medium to high risk cruises, the low risk cruises. The operators should be doing risk assessments anyway, but we're not like sitting down. We got to have a presentation and all that stuff. As we see how the virus continues to develop, I can see this winding down more. I can't give you a definitive timeline, but like, for instance, I know with you, for scripts, for example, I know like the Sproul, we haven't been asking for, the quick 1-day cruises we haven't seen those in a while, which is fine. It's because we know you're on it. We know your cruises are low risk. And so it's not a big deal. It's more like the big cruises where there's like a lot of questions that, the science program managers, integrated program section up at NSF might have questions. UNOLS office, like, be nice to be able to have a little more insight, ask a few more questions. Also know that science, the captain, the ship operator, the marine techs, the science party are all on the same sheet music. They've gotten way fewer than they were before. Because we know a lot of cruises are pretty routine and your processes are all really good. For example, a hot cruise on a Kilomoana, we don't get a briefing every time anymore. We may see they may send it to us electronically, say, here's what we're doing. Please let us know if you have any questions. And that works well. That helpful?
Yeah, thanks. I would say though, it'd be good to have just clear guidance so that I could point to when an assessment is required and when it's not. as opposed to trying to guess.
Okay, all right. Well, that's a good point. We can work to help with that because we don't want to waste your staff time. I mean, staff time is very valuable, and we recognize that. Okay. Barring any other questions, I'll go ahead and kind of give you a quick rundown of what's happened in the last year with the UNOLS. UNOLS as a community and the UNOLS office. We had our annual meeting last year. We wrapped up in November. So starting in December, one of the first things we had to do was kind of re-rack the 2021 schedules a little bit for the globals and the vehicles, because we were finding we kind of like oversubscribed, especially the vehicle crews, and still with the ongoing pandemic guidelines we were working with. So we did that. Great job with the schedulers working with the vehicle community to get that sorted out so we have a workable schedule, and great support by the agencies. Desk had a meeting in December, like their normal annual meeting, and as well as a new users meeting, and SCORE had a monthly meeting. And through all the whole last year, our meetings have been virtual, other than one small meeting I'll mention later on. We've just continued on virtually, and we'll continue that way until we see a clear road ahead with the pandemic and people can travel, get to places safely and without concerns. So right now, our foreseeable future, at least through the end of the year and early into 2022, is virtual meetings. January, we had an MSROC meeting as well as an AICC one with the Healy in town, and the Coast Guard crew available. We continued with our Marine Superintendent check-in meetings. And then I just wanted to note that, on the initiative of Scripps, UW, and Woods Hole, they started doing weekly scheduling meetings themselves to talk about the global ships, the ocean class ships, primarily the global ships, but ocean class, as well as the vehicles, because that's always the challenge, or the biggest challenge in getting scheduling done. So rather than like monthly meetings we typically have, they got together and started meeting weekly to start working particular issues, having more defined work lists. And so it really paid off over the years. Their schedules came into shape, I think, early on for what was probably going to work in 2022. And so that we met the September target for having our schedules pretty much firmed up for 2022. We met that. So hats off to, particularly, Hannah DeLapp from Scripps, Carrie Strom from Woods Hole, Robert Camphouse and Liz Brenner at UW for doing this. And then over time, UH joined it with Anita Lopez, UAF and Doug Baer joined in too. And then eventually also the Langseth with Jesus Guyton joining in to really work on hammering out a lot of these, especially these interrelated issues between the big ships. So I just wanted to note that it was a big deal, actually. It seems pretty minor, but actually it was a big deal. And we also put out our first newsletter of 2021 in January. We send those out quarterly, so that was good. Moving on, February, we continued on. SCORE started doing monthly meetings. They found out that worked better for them, especially since we couldn't meet face-to-face. Marine superintendents are still meeting, ship scheduling. We actually kicked off the big, UW, Scripps, and Woods Hole on MFP early in the game. They were our first ones because we know they got a lot of experience of scheduling. They're kind of power users because they have multiple ships. And so we brought them in to kind of like help us start the process of scheduling in the marine facilities planning. And we've done a great job with that. I'll also talk more about that later on, but that's when we kind of kicked all that off. March, SCORE is meeting again. We had a webinar for the rest of the UNOLS schedulers to get them rolling with MFP, especially the smaller vessel users. And so that was helpful. And that was just noting it was a year since we had shut down, in March of 2020, when we had to shut down for 3 months because of coronavirus. So just kind of noting that infamous, anniversary. But we've had great successes since then. April, we extended the contract with George Washington, our telemedicine supporter, for another 2 years per our contract. They've done a great job supporting us, particularly the ships when they're at sea and they have medical issues, but also with all this work we've done with coronavirus. And so we went ahead and, after getting feedback from our Marine superintendents that they were pleased with the support they get at sea with the provider, we went ahead and extended the contract. And we have another window after this for, I think, 2 more years that we can do this with George Washington. So that reduces staff time for having to deal with contract administration and overhead. Maris had a meeting, our new stand-up committee, our new standing committee of Maris, as they were elevated after last year's annual meeting and the election. Now to a standing meeting, standing committee. Safety committee got together in April to meet. Scheduling meetings happened. This was smaller ships in April. Marine superintendents, tech managers meetings started happening monthly too, led by Brandy Murphy from our office, working with all the tech managers. So that's been a big plus too. They kind of followed what the Marine superintendents doing. So routine, regular passing of important information rather than waiting for a big meeting. We're just doing it by email. So I think that's worked out well. We sent out our 2nd edition of the annual newsletter for 2021. May, we had a council spring meeting, we had a thick meeting. Scheduling continues on, tech managers, and we updated the guidelines because we started to see kind of like the impacts of the vaccine rollout. So that's why we updated in May. And then in June, we updated again with some additional information from George Washington. And then you see all the other meetings we had, some summer meetings, spring meetings. We had an MFP webinar for the scientists to help them in preparing their new, what used to be ship time requests, now how to do their ship time and marine equipment requests in MFP. So Alice ran a great webinar and many people from the science community joined in to learn from that. And we've seen the results. PIs are putting in all their ship time and marine equipment requests regularly in MFP now. And actually not a lot of questions on how to do it. Most have figured it out pretty quickly and are working with the system, and that's helping the schedulers with putting together schedules. So we appreciate all the great work by the science community to come up to speed in our new system. July, we put a new contract in place with the MFP developer, MAS Software Engineering from the Netherlands. We've been under a development contract up for the first year and a quarter, and now we had to shift over to a hosting and support contract. So now this will be the contract that will continue on as on an annual basis for them to continue supporting MFP. We have an initial 2 years, but after that it can be renewed every year easily. So so far we've had a great relationship with the developer, so we were pleased to move ahead with them. All the other meetings that they're listed here, I'm not going to read them all off to you. And then we also in July started to kick off the cruise planning module in MFP. Again, starting with UW Scripps and Hui. And right now we're working closely with UW in the initial cruise planner kind of beta run. And now also touch more on that. But that was a big accomplishment getting there. Brandy hosted a CTD overboard handling system issues meeting. We've noticed there's been a number of issues in the fleet the last few years, particularly these newer handling systems. So Brandy brought together the operators and some of the science community and the winch pools and all that together to talk about these issues, to see if there's some common things and what some best steps moving ahead forward. And there's a white paper she's finishing up that kind of summarizes what occurred in that meeting. We actually had one in-person meeting. Sharon Cooper from STEM Seas was actually out here in the Seattle area. And so Brandy and I met with her and had a great meeting talking about how we get STEM Seas started again with now we have some more flexibility on the ships and schedules, and the fact that she's dealing with a fully vaccinated community. So, and that's already happening now. So it was nice to be able to kind of kick that off again. The newsletter, August continues on our meetings. We updated the guidelines again. September, we actually met the goal of pretty much firming up the 2022 ship schedules through great work of the schedulers, great support from the agencies, participating in our regular meetings, asking a lot of great questions and committing to what needed to be committed to for transits and everything else. And so we're still getting all those schedules published in MFP. But we've made a lot of progress with that, and I'll also touch on that later on, so I won't dig into it too much. And we got the agency, the annual agency letter looking ahead to 2022 academic research fleet operations for the findings and recommendations. That's a joint, kind of a joint letter put together by NSF, ONR, and the UNOLS office. Now that there's a subcommittee put together from the council, it's going to be looking at developing the response in the next few weeks. And I'll just tell you, there's no surprises in there. We're kind of continue on with the size of the fleet, acknowledging the retirement coming up of the Oceanus and the Endeavor. Oceanus at the end of this year, Endeavor will continue to operate through next year, and then we'll see what happens from there. And then last but not least, October, we start the annual meeting like we're doing today. Other meetings, there's RV Tech is this month, which is a big deal. A lot of work's gone in preparing for that, particularly with Brandy, as well as the rest of the office. But a lot of the work's been done by Brandy to get ready, and the leadership of RV Tech, Lee Ellett and Jules Humman. So that's great. Again, like I noted earlier, 361 cruises completed since we went back to work mid last year. And also the safety standards, the 11th edition is ready to roll out. It's been approved by the council. So we'll get that posted shortly, and we'll be distributing hard copies out to the fleet. So, and that update was accomplished primarily by Rear Admiral Jeff Garrett, Coast Guard retired, he is the chair of the safety committee, and he did a lot of that himself, recognizing the workload in our ship operators, particularly during the pandemic. So he did a fabulous job, and so we look forward to getting that out to the fleet shortly. And just a couple of quickly just touching this. Well, other things we do regularly. There's a CI cyber infrastructure working group that meets bi-weekly. The SatNag group, High Seas Net group, they meet quarterly. RV Tech training subcommittee meets monthly. These are all meetings done with Brandy participates in, and sometimes other members of the office. So that's a pretty regular, busy routine with those alone. Alice and I meet with the MFP developer weekly for the most part to talk about MFP issues. And then, as Bruce asked earlier on, we've been involved with a lot of COVID-19 risk assessment reviews over the past year or two, year and a half. Those are starting to trickle down now because, like I talked earlier in response to Bruce's question, but there's a lot of the other things that go to the regular business rhythm of the UNOLS office. That's pretty much it. I was going to touch on the tech pool though, because we didn't really talk about the tech pool last year in the annual meeting. It's an important part of the UNOLS office, and I thought it'd be great to bring it to light. Thanks to Brandy. Brandy Murphy runs this, and she works closely with Texas A&M on this. This is a lot of what her workload is too. I'd say at least 50% of her workload is working on tech pool stuff. They've added 3 technicians this year. There's a couple others that are very interested in joining. They've hired out 2 to operating institutions, which tells you a lot about the quality of the tech pool. They integrated COVID-19 and risk mitigation into how they're working with the tech pool. Because most of these technicians are not local to where the ships that are operating with, there's been a lot of time and effort and cost put into quarantine, isolation, while we were working through that over the last year. So it just kind of added a lot of complexity into the coordination of all this. And, the technicians that work in a tech pool have done a great job being very flexible, adapting to all these different operator, the particulars for each operator, and just, willingly going with it, working with it, not fighting it, and being ready to go to sea when the ship's ready to leave the dock. So real hats off to those technicians that work in the pool. That's the life. It's not very irregular. It's kind of all over the place, but they do a great job, and they go out and do a great job supporting the scientists. And generally, they've been asked for, no surprise here, for longer projects rather than short projects. This kind of gives you an idea. These were all the ones that were completed in the last year, filling with tech pool, and you see there's quite a few actually here. A lot of at sea projects. And it's kind of all over the spectrum of who they're supporting, but it's great to see. And this is us compared to, originally had, as a result of COVID-19, how many were canceled. So it kind of gives you a good idea what the impact was in COVID-19, but here's what they did support of the last year, which is quite a bit. And then here is just kind of looking back to what it was like the previous 2 years. So it's kind of a similar rhythm, actually. But the good news is the tech pool is heavily utilized throughout the fleet. It's a very important asset. It's great that it's so well supported by, especially NSF. I know this is Jim Hollick's one of his initiatives, and we really appreciate that. And we're glad to support all this. So that's it for the kind of a summary, kind of the year roll up for the UNOLS and the UNOLS office. Are there any questions? Okay, well, I must have just dazzled you with brilliance then, I guess. So I'm going to turn it over to Alice now, and she's going to give you an update on MFP.
Okay, thanks, Doug, for all that. I've got a few quick slides, and then I will we'll do a little super mini demo for all of you. I think a lot of you have seen it already. So we're moving from, if you haven't known this yet, but we're moving from the ship time SCRS system to marine facilities planning. And we've been, as Doug said, we've been working on it all year long. An update as to where we are right now. We have over on the right here, you can see over on the right, I'm not sure if you can see my cursor or not, but these are all the modules that will eventually be available to us. And so we've started so far, the science portal is online and fully usable. We have already 750 requests in the system, and I want to give a big shout out to Liz Brenner, who formerly of Scripps, now helping UW, and we're glad to pull her out of retirement to help us too. And she's been really helping us move the SCRs over of the active projects over to MFP, which has been great. So next, as Doug mentioned, the 2022 schedules are in the process of being published. So most of the schedules are in there. I think folks are a little bit nervous because it's a new system, and so they're a little bit nervous to push the publish button. But we've been working closely with all of the schedulers to get them in there, and again, we'll show you a little bit of that in just a second. The research planner, that is also online right now and for everyone to use. So the research planner module is a tool that helps the PI and even the operators do cruise route planning and also station planning. And so it's open for anyone to use who has an account. So a pretty neat tool. As Doug said, we are working on the cruise planning module. So we're not fully there yet, but UW is doing kind of our beta testing with a really ambitious cruise, the Gradients cruise with Ginger Armbrust that has just about everything going on. So they're putting it to a good test. And so we're hoping once we get through that, and then I will be doing a training session at the RV Tech meeting for a couple-hour training session there. And we're hoping to enlist other institutions around that time. So if anyone is interested in moving forward with that, we would love to talk with you. Another module that we've been working on is the inventory management. Oops, I went backwards. Is the inventory management module. So mostly so far, we've been working with the RCRV team and the developers to make sure that the system has what we need. But again, once we kind of get them rolling in it, we're hoping they can be our beta testers, and then we can, again, start getting other institutions on board. And finally, the last one that we've been kind of thinking about is the reporting module, which I think is going to be one of the most interesting modules in that we're collecting so much really great data that we just have to figure out what exactly we want to get out of it and in what fashion. So it's pretty neat. It's going slow, I will say, and it is a work in progress, but the developers have been wonderful, and they really do want to make this work and work for us. You know, they're not trying to put us into another square peg into a round hole or anything like that. So in addition to this, did I skip one? Why? Oh, there we go. Here we go. In addition to all that, we have been doing some trainings and introductions, webinars, if you want to call them. We had one for the PIs to help them understand how to navigate and also how to get into the science portal and how to complete their SME. We had one for the funding agencies, and then we had another. We have had several with the schedulers and a lot of one-on-one with the schedulers too. It's a complex system, and so there are a lot of bells and whistles, and you got to really figure out how to make it all work. But everybody's really been patient and moving forward with this. So we've also had some cruise planning and project management sessions. A couple of these we have recorded, so if anyone's interested in seeing these, I can send you the links to the recordings. We've also developed some help documents. There's one specifically for the user that's kind of more science related. There's one for the operator, which deals with everything from scheduling to project management, and then one for our office too. I'm struggling to go forward. Here we go. Okay, let's do a real quick demo here. I wanted to show you, so mfp.us is our site's name. And you don't have to go log in to get to the schedules. You can go to mfp.us and click schedule. And it brings you up to you can see if you click hybrid, you can see our schedules that are there. So I just wanted to make you folks aware of that. Let's look at the map first. So you can choose the ship that you want to see from this button here. You can choose the period that you want to see from here by clicking period or using these arrows. And then what this does, and you can also click, these are layers, okay? And so what this does is it shows you the ships, where our ships are right now. It uses AIS data. And then it also shows the projects that are on a published schedule within the time period that's on this, that you've selected, okay? So another neat layer here, you can have GEBCO is bathymetry, you can see marine protected areas, EEZs, and you can also see the ship's tracks. This takes a little second to load. There we go. So you can see where the ships have been, again, in this period that you've selected. One neat thing to point out here is the Sikuliak. She got as far north as she's ever gotten, almost up to 80 north here. So it's kind of a cool feature. I was talking to Dave Orcucci, and he said he was tracking the Healy through in their last trip. So it's been neat. And right now we're using, you can see we're using the institutional logos to mark the ship that's doing the cruise, but it's been pointed out that some of these institutions have multiple ships, and so we're thinking of a next solution for that. So let's see, is that more what? Okay, now we want to go, and I want to actually show you the ship schedules. So the big button you want to remember is this right next to your name. It's your navigation button. These are the modules that are available to you. I can assure you probably not nearly as many as me. But this is the schedule module, and it shows us here, we've got, I've chosen again the ships, and I've chosen my period of January 1st, 2022 to January 1st, 2023. And you can see the schedule along a timeline here. So you can get a little bit more information by clicking the dots underneath the ship. So you can see here, you've got port information and exact dates. And if you click again, you get even more information, the PI name. Another way to do this, if you click on the actual cruise, you'll see over here, the information about that cruise comes up over in the right. So this is pretty much their application, their ship time request. Oh, one other quick one is if you hover over this, you also get the information for the cruise. So it's a quick way to say, oh, the classic cruise, what is that? Oh, it sounds great, right, there we go. So one more thing I want to show you, if we just look at the map view. Oh, come on. Again, it's showing us the projects for the ships that I've selected on published schedules in this time zone. So you can see the Sikuliak schedule out over here. If you zoom in, it actually gives you more information about these projects. And then you click on the project, you can see where their track lines are, at least those associated with their ship time request. Okay, next, I just want to do a quick showing you of the science portal. So again, to get here, you click on the navigation button and down to science portal. And so this is where a PI would request a new ship time request or application, SME. And here we've got two different types. This is your standard, and then this is for a piggyback is what is an ancillary project. So if you know that you're going to work on the piggyback onto the OOI Pioneer mooring, you'd complete a piggyback application here. So once these applications are submitted, it triggers the workflow and the schedulers can then see these and potentially schedule them. So that's this top section, this new application section, and the other section are active applications. So this is me, it's my test kind of data. And so you can see I have this Alice's test project for spring of 2022. And here it's telling me the steps that I need to do. And I still have not completed my cruise request form. So if I can click on that button and it'll take me to my cruise request form and I can do what I need to do. Whereas on this one, I've completed it, and the next step would be to add this cruise request to a schedule. This is not something that a PI would not have that access, but they could confirm their application funding. And then in this one, it's even a step further. I'm very well funded here, as you can see. And we're in a cruise planning process. And so I see the steps that I need to complete to finish up my cruise plan. Okay, and then the last thing I wanted to show you as a demo real quick is the research planner. So again, up to this navigation button and then up to research planning here. And this is that tool I was talking about that allows you or helps you to plan, route plan and station plan. And so you're able to upload waypoints into here from a template. And so I know this example, Seattle is in here. And you can see my waypoints now on a map, which is interesting. And here, that's pretty cool. We can see that it's in the US EEZ and also in the Canadian EEZ, this transit here. The system is telling me that, and I should also worry about the offshore Pacific seamounts. I can add ports, Seattle, and I want to go back into Seattle. And the system, you can see it automatically rerouted over, so you're not going over land. You can also change your ship speed here. If you click on it, you can change it up or down. Or if you say, oh, the sampling station, I'm going to have to stay here for 3 days. Great. And there it is. And all of that data is put together to give you a total time. So that kind of helps the PIs. This is available, you know, in the proposal stages. And so it'll help the PIs to figure out just how much time they need. There are other features about station details and timetables, which I'm not going to go into here. So those are the quick things I wanted to show you specifically about MFP. Let me go back to one more slide here. And, okay. Oh my. One more slide here. So where are we going now with MFP? And I want to say that this is a work in progress, right? We welcome feedback. And so as you're going through this, and I encourage folks to go through it, go into the system and play around and click around and tell me what works and what doesn't work. The developers are super, like I said, are super interested in working with us and making a system that works for us. So things that are happening next, cruise planning and project management, as I said, we're finishing up what we're calling the participant portal, so that participants can kind of sign up for the cruise and we can add forms to that. And once that's done and we have our training at RV Tech, we're hoping to enlist more institutions and more ships to the cruise planning process. We're also going to assess the schedule construction module. The schedules have been working with it in 2022. And so we want to see what works, what didn't work. I have kind of a list of priorities from the schedulers that I've gotten throughout the year, and we want to work with the developers on that. One big one is to work on some sort of schedule export. I've gotten that feedback from a number of people that the export that comes out of the system is not sufficient. I think the developers are more used to folks just going in and grabbing all the data they need as opposed to, sending exports. But we'll work on that. We also want to work on figuring out a way to make sure that the facilities, NDSF and all the other facilities operators are getting what they need from the scheduling process. And so finally, the inventory management we're also working on. We're going to start to populate with our CRV, as I mentioned. And again, once that gets going, we're going to enlist other institutions. And I should have put on here too is reporting, because I see that as a really key point. So that's all I have, but I would love questions. Does anyone have questions?
Alice, there's a question on chat for you.
Oh, let me see it.
Jules.
Go for it. Doug, do you want to read it?
I know there are only 2 months left, but will the 2021 schedules be added to MFP?
We weren't planning on it, Jules, but we can talk about if there's a big need, because in order to make that happen, we have to make sure all those STRs are over to the new system.
No,
so
that's right. The fact that the old system does export to different kinds of calendars kind of takes care of that need. Don't
okay. Okay.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Well, there we go. Doug, I think we're both just wowing them here.
We gotta send some coffee around everybody, give everybody a shot. Espresso.
That's right. Well, I'm here. If anyone has questions, again, I please send me feedback. We want to hear from you.
Great job, Alice. Thanks, and thanks for all your great work over the last year and a half on this. It's come a long ways, and you've done a great job bringing the schedulers along and a lot of other entities with it. So thanks for all the time you put into this.
Thanks.
And being so adaptable and flexible to everybody else. So
it's been interesting. Yeah. Sure. It's been good. It's a challenging project, but it's been pretty rewarding too. So
I will summarize the goal. I think people are starting to see the value of it. We see the schedulers now talk more in MFP terms, and no longer do we hear, well, STRS does this. It's more about, no, I used it for this, I used it for that. This is really cool. So I think change is hard for everybody, but change is coming, and people seem to be accepting it pretty darn well actually so far. So I think we're getting there. And thanks for everybody's support while we've gone through this. We think we'll be 100%. Well, you're never 100% with these systems, but we think we'll be way down the road here in the coming months. It'll be the full capabilities will be utilized by the fleet. So it'll be great. Okay, so I'm going to move on and now start talking about the ballot. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again. Sorry about that, long slide. I'll get there quickly. Okay, so we recently sent out to all the UNOLS representatives ballots for this year's annual meeting. 2 things on it. One for the elections for council members, which we're used to seeing every year. We're looking for a large member, operator member, and a non-operator member this year. So we have some great candidates for that. So you'll see those in your package, and which is really an online package. So, right, Alice?
Yes.
Yeah, it's in SurveyMonkey. Then also there are some charter ballot measures. I just want to give you the background a little bit. After assuming the chair role for UNOLS, Dennis tasked a subcommittee within the council to take a look at the charter, especially the main body of the charter, not so much the annexes, which were just updated in 2019. because you had questions, about really how clear it was in certain requirements or obligations or responsibilities in the document. So a small committee was created, led by Debbie Bronk, the next UNOLS chair, to look at this, and they went through with a fine-tooth comb, made some recommendations for updating the language, I'll say, to make it clearer or to better organize, not really to really change it, but this will make it easier to use for people and understand. So you're going to see that in your ballot package. Talks about the academic research fleet and UNOLS relationships and gets the terminology updated. We've all been talking a lot the last few years about academic research fleet versus UNOLS vessels and things like that. So we tried to really clear that up within the charter. Did some reorganizing it to make it easier, hopefully to use, especially like for elections and things like that. And added a glossary of terms because we do have some unique terms in there. So trying to make it even easier by adding the glossary in there. So please review that and vote. And the last day to vote is by 10 November. After that, we'll go through, we'll review the tally up the ballots, and we'll announce the results shortly thereafter. Particularly for new members of the council, but also for this. Hopefully, we would expect that the changes of the charter will go through. But if you have questions, don't hesitate to reach out and ask. We're glad to answer those questions. Did I miss anything, Alice? Dennis, anything to add to that?
No, great job, Doug, Alice. I mean, I just want to say to everybody, from this presentation, I started the meeting by saying acknowledging the UNOLS office and, the great job they do. And you can see how busy it is and how, the importance of the work and the progress being made. It's just so impressive, Doug. Thank you and your team for fantastic work.
Well, thanks. It's all Brandy, Bridget, and Alice.
It's always that way.
I just sit around with my feet up on the desk eating bonbons, So we appreciate. We have a great team. Thank you very much for your support.
So is that the last presentation for today?
No, nope.
Okay.
Now I'm going to talk about vessel use. I know you're tired of me already, so
No, just wondering where.
I'm just going to talk about vessel usage and scheduling, because that's usually a very important part of the meeting, and we start off with this. So real quickly, and I've touched on a large part about this. 2021, we started off with cruises per posted schedules. They had to make some adjustments along the way. Cruise got canceled because of COVID-19 pre-cruise testing. I've had other issues like an ROV issue on a cruise where it didn't really work out, so I had to do some shuffling of the deck. But overall, the ship operators and the science parties executed per the 2021 schedules, which is great. It's a great way to return back more and more back to the pre-pandemic regimen. But we've got a ways to go, like we talked about earlier, but we've made a lot of progress. And I've already talked about, we kicked off scheduling for 2022 in February, and we've already talked about the weekly meetings initiated by the operators themselves to really talk about issues and tackle them earlier in the game. And we had everything resolved in September. Are starting to post the schedules like we talked about. And about almost half the fleet now is posted in MFP. You go in there, you can see their 2022 schedules, or a beginning of their 2022 schedules at least. So that's good, great progress along the way by the scheduling committee. We always bring up these tables to kind of give you a good idea of how the fleet's being utilized. No surprise in 2020, we dropped significantly because of COVID-19. We stopped operating for 3+ months, and we had to slowly climb back. 2021, we did a good job coming backwards. We couldn't do everything. One, because the impacts of pre-cruise quarantine and self-isolation impacted the availability of people. Also, not all scientists could get back in their labs to get ready for cruises. So that's why we didn't get back fully to the pre-pandemic levels, like you see here, over 3,200 days in 2019, 3,059 days in 2021. But actually, I think a very strong return though. And then we look ahead to 2022 here, and we are always lower here at this point in time looking ahead, because a lot of things get filled in later on, like institutional cruises. Other rapid cruises come up. other opportunities come up. We hear from a lot of other communities asking, hey, can we get some days in a UNOLS ship? So we think we're well on track to getting back to a pre-pandemic level here in the coming year as the year develops. But just kind of give you a snapshot in time where we are today, or based on the schedules we have ready to publish or published already for 2022. This is how it breaks out. So we think we're going to be in good shape. Let's see. Here we go. Okay, this kind of gives you a better look more easily about, by funding agency. The blue is NSF, and you see the navy and the gray, and after that some NOAA time, and then others, which is institutional, state days, other different funding sources like the gradient screws that Alice touched on, which is funded by an outside organization. So that just kind of gives you a breakdown where we're at. Again, thanks to our agencies for the great support they continue to provide us. And this is just a different way of looking at it. This also shows the requests, and you can see requests are still down somewhat on this, but I think a lot of people are waiting to see how this shakes out from the pandemic in some ways. So that just kind of gives you an update where we are today. And you can see actually we're doing pretty darn well though. I think where the percentage of funded requests though is good. You can see it's actually up to compare the number of funded versus the requests here. So that is good news. But we also know the agencies are not, NSF got funded a little better this year, and looking ahead, you're optimistic, but there hasn't been like a huge increase in funding for science, to the funding agencies. So we've been pretty steady, as you can see, most of the time other than the pandemic year. Okay, I know this is hard to see. I just wanted to give you a quick snapshot. This is the MFP. If you put 13 of the ships online at once, and you get a good idea actually how busy our fleet is between cruises or maintenance, and then you can see we even account for general upkeep and outfitting, which you got to do that too. So you can't be at sea 365 days a year. But I think this is telling about actually how busy the fleet actually is. And this is one of the powers of MFP. You can actually overlay all this together and see this. Whereas in STRS, you would have had to pile through like spreadsheets of data to get to this. So I just thought this is you can't see it because it's so small in this slide. But if you look at it on your own screen, you can see you can do this. You can go into schedule construction, and you can go into review, and you can overlay or you'll be able to look at it when all the ships get scheduled. When you sign in, you'll be able to see all this right up front. So I think this is just a good news story that our fleet is actually pretty darn busy. We're always trying to protect it, defend them, and the funding on the Hill back in Washington, D.C. Well, I think this kind of slide in the future is going to help tell that story, thanks to our new system. And just real quickly, just talking about by ship class, how they're doing, how it breaks down for, at sea for science, and days in support of science, which is transits and loading, unloading days, maintenance and upkeep. And then there's inspection time included in that as well in the purple. And there's standby days, which is not a lot of standby days, as you can see for globals, and not much for the ocean intermediate ships either. It means our ships are being really well utilized. And then as we go down to smaller ships, they have more and more time. But also remember, you have smaller crews that you don't have substitute mariners who go out for 2 months at a time, come home and are off. These smaller ships are dependent on the same crew all year long. So it's a little different story, and their ships have less endurance. So that's one reason why. But anyway, we show this every year, and we're doing pretty darn well for fitting in within this box, which is the full optimal year for a vessel as previously defined. So we're doing pretty good. And this breaks it out by individual ships. You can see like the Thompson was like fully utilized all year long. And but even Atlantis is coming back. You see Ravel was heavily utilized because all these days, between the days at sea for science, and then you add in the green here, you end up into the full optimal year. It means they're doing really well. So that's great news. So anyway, this is good. This is stuff you got to kind of sit and stare at for a while, think about it. It tells you the story. But overall, like the Armstrong had a huge year, very busy, knocking out a lot of cruises up north. So they fared very well. And the Kilimwana, we had a busy year too, as you can see in here. So anyway, just kind of providing this data. It'll be available after our meeting today, so people can dig into a lot more rather than listen to me drone on about it. And the last thing I have to present is every year we update where the projected fleet service dates are at. This table has been updated. Now it reflects the completed midlife refit of the Atlantis, which we'll hear about at one of the later meetings from Tim Toomey, and also the midlife refit of the Revell. And the Navy's recognized extended service life now of these 3 ships. So that's a big accomplishment to get those ships updated and extended their lives for quite a bit longer. And then you can see for the rest of the fleet. The other thing I draw your attention to in here, looking at this, is the Oceanus, as I mentioned earlier, retires at the end of 2021. She is out doing her last cruise of real note right now, or shortly, and then they'll start ramping her down after this month, after a long storied career of supporting our community. And Endeavor, at least so right now, will operate through 2022. We're already scheduled for the coming year. And then we'll see what happens after that based on developments in the CRV project, which we'll hear more about in a few days when we have a project update from Claire Reimers. And other than that, everybody else has been kind of steady. Now we have all 3 new RCRVs on here, between the Tawny, the Narragansett Dawn, and the Gilbert Mason. So that's great to be able to look ahead to our new capabilities coming in the next few years. And I think, so that's about any questions on this. Okay, and with that, you've heard enough from me. Any questions in general about from UNOLS from what we've presented today? Okay, I've put everybody to sleep, I can tell. All right, excellent.
Those great presentations.
Thanks, Dennis. So Dennis, I'm going to turn it back over to you to conclude for today. And thanks everybody for listening in.
Yeah, again, those were great presentations. We're quiet, but just I'm always in awe with the work you guys are doing in the office, and I mean it keeps the fleet healthy, and that's what it's all about. It keeps the science going and strong, and that's what it's all about. So can't thank you all enough, Doug in the office, Alice. So the one other thing I wanted to mention, as far as an initiative that we're working on within UNOLS and the council and the standing committees is, we're all familiar with the need and strong desire to open the doors to all of our institutions, for increased diversity, inclusiveness. And UNOLS, needs to do that as well. And we've had it as an agenda item for the last, several council meetings. And, just thinking about how to move forward on that. So, I've been in touch recently with the chairs of the standing committees, asking that each chair and their committee bring forward ideas on what they can do within that unit, within their committee. What can you do to enhance diversity within the UNOLS community? And I'm clarifying, it's not your home institutions that we're looking at. It's not the ships, that are operated by institutions that we're looking at. It's UNOLS. It's the family that we are here online now, that we could think about how could we improve our own home, right, as far as diversity. And so I've been having phone calls with the chairs, and those need to continue. I haven't talked to everybody yet, but for the council meeting on November 15th, it'll be an agenda item, and we'll work around the room and give each committee via the chair an opportunity to say, this is what we think we can do. And not everybody's going to necessarily have an idea ready to put on the front burner, but we're just keeping the conversation going. And I anticipate that every committee will have not every committee, but have distinct ideas on what they can do to improve diversity within the UNOLS community and specifically within their committees. And so I just looking forward to it. If we just have a little bit of success with a couple of committees and we just keep working on it and we have a little more success, diversification takes a long time, right? We've all seen the improvements we've made, as far as diversifying our community over the last 20 years and 50-year anniversary. If we look at the people in UNOLS originally, I think it would look very different, if we just look at all the photos than what we look like now. But we still need to keep working on it. We need to be aware of it and, make it a priority. And, I'm not aware of any of us being experts on how to do it. And, but if we just keep working on it, we'll get there. And again, it'll take time, but it has just, it's my priority right now. And so I just want to let you know about it. And so you can, if you're, watching from the outside, just keep an eye and see how we're doing. And, if you have ideas, please share them with the council or the office or chairs of the standing committees. And we'll take that, anything you've got and see what we can do going forward. So just that FYI. Thank you. And so if that's it, Doug and Alice, then I think we're off, for now until we come back on Monday. Is that right, Alice? Go ahead.
We've got one more comment, Doug. Did you want to mention at all about the Tiger team? Go for it.
Thanks, Alice, and thanks, Rose, for bringing it up. So just quickly, the ship operators are struggling these days, dealing with crewing issues. It's a problem across the planet. It's not just in our little world, but it's certainly now trickled down to the academic research fleet. We're having problems crewing ships. And so at the recommendation of Rose at NSF, we're going to kick off a Tiger team within the Research Vessel Operators Committee to take a look at crewing issues and what kind of things can we do to improve or to help solve the crewing issue. I mean, there's no preconceived notions with it. What are all the possibilities? The agencies have already said they'll stand up and support, new initiatives to help us with this challenge. I mean, one example is we talked earlier today about the tech pool, which was an initiative a few years ago, thanks to Jim Hollick and Alice, and now Brandy, to figure out how to deal with the challenges with the marine technicians and having enough technicians to do the work and the capabilities we need out at sea. Well, maybe we have to do something like that to help support share mariners across the fleet. I'm just throwing out as one possibility that'll be talked about. It's a complex one because of licensing and different sizes of the ships and things like that. But just to kind of give you an idea, a little taste of the kind of things they'll be looking at and talking about. So that'll be kicking off here shortly. We've already got plenty of people interested in working on that committee or that Tiger team to kind of help solve this problem. You can't solve it overnight, but we can find some solutions to get going quickly or hopefully pay dividends down the road. So thanks for the reminder and thanks for supporting that, Rose and Rob Sparrow. So we can get rolling with it.
Great. And so let me just finish then by saying Monday, the 18th of October, agency reports, be here or be square, right?
Right.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Great to see everybody. Thanks for making time.